Hi, this is Connie again from the Rangjung Yeshe Institute in Nepal. Now, some people ask me sometimes why we aren't learning grammar in the traditional way, the way that Tibetans have traditionally learned it. And the reason is basically because this is actually pretty difficult. So we're actually covering in our course the main points that people learn when they study Tibetan language in the traditional way, but we're doing it in a way that's a little bit easier for English language speaking people to understand. But just to give you some background about the way that the Tibetan grammar is traditionally studied, there are two texts that are considered the canonical texts in Tibetan grammar. They're called the Sumchupa, which means the 30 verses, and the Takjukpa, which means something like the Guide to Signs. Both of these texts were written by Tunmi Sambota, who is considered the inventor or the developer of the Tibetan alphabet and the Tibetan grammar. So the Sumchupa is 30 verses that explain the formation of letters, the ways that letters can be combined, and particles, which particles are one of the major focuses of Tibetan grammar, which we'll be covering throughout this course. Now, the second text, the Takjukpa, is a little bit more complex, and it discusses gender, which we won't really touch on in this course because it's kind of a complicated topic. And it also covers verbs, and we'll be studying verbs a little bit throughout this course as well. So the traditional way that this is studied is that people sit down with the Sumchupa and they memorize all 30 verses before they get any instruction on it. And then once they've memorized all 30 of those verses, then they go to a teacher who explains the meaning of every line and every verse in the text. This is similar to the way that monks and nuns study in monastic situations. Now, since people who are English speakers aren't necessarily as familiar with this style of learning, it's a little bit difficult to learn in this way. But we're still covering the same material that's covered in these texts throughout this course. And these are really interesting texts to look at and really interesting texts to study if you're interested in learning them after you've gotten a little bit of familiarity with Tibetan grammar.